Thank you so much, Jack. Really appreciate that introduction. So what I'm going to talk about today is a trip that I recently took. I've been working over the last 6 to 8 months, for some of you that don't know, on acting and modeling. So I've been developing myself in the skill set, the knowledge in the industry, all kinds of different experiences, practice, feedback, coaching, everything I can get my hands on, because I have a deep interest in getting into acting and modeling, in addition to all those other hobbies and interests that you already talked about. So recently, I went to the International Model and Talent Agency, IMTA, and I'll pass this around. This is their photo book for those that were a part of the event itself. So you can take a look and see who all was there, various age groups that participated, and all people that are interested in getting into acting and modeling. And what I did was I competed in a series of competitions related to both talent, acting side, and modeling content. And I'll show you some of my performance here now. And if you'd like to watch them later, I've put my website out that also has links to the performances in my Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram and also see them too. So here's a jeans runway competition.
6408. 6981. 7123.
So there's a lot of subtlety, believe it or not, in even a jeans runway competition. When I first got into this, I didn't fully grasp all of the intricacies associated with your form, your confidence, your posing, your whole presence on the entire runway. Every single step, every single action that's on there is purposefully calculated and done. So there's a lot of training and development that went into just that performance alone. Let me show you another performance on the talent side, the acting side. I've got a monologue that I did.
Class, let's talk about algebra. A function is math language for change. It's like a machine. You go in and you get changed. Well, you don't go in, X does, and it gets transformed into Y. And X is the sort of thing you want to put in the machine, because X is a variable. You wouldn't want to put C inside. That's a constant, and a constant is constant. You go up to a constant, hey, how are you doing today, constant? Fine. The next thing, fine. The next thing, fine. It's a constant! But variable. Hey, how are you doing today, variable? Oh, pretty good. The next day. Great! The next day. Lousy. It's a variable. Mathematicians focus on the process and the result. Little is paid to the beginning as you stand there at a new experience. Standing, or sometimes sitting. Sitting in folding chairs on the north lawn of Princeton University. We were freshmen, and this was our first day at college. They announced over the loudspeaker, "Incoming freshmen." We all ducked.
So those were two performances, right? And there was a lot of difference in those two performances. The different things I had to learn, the different skills I had to display, the different abilities, the different looks, the different styling, all differences in how I presented myself in order to do the modeling and acting that I did. And I even won a couple of awards for some of the work that I did, and you can see some of the bling here that I've got going on here this morning. The first one was for cold reads, which is how an actor gets work. An actor basically takes a script and has to read off the page and provide that connection, that emotion, that all the content necessary for effective acting right off the reading of a piece of paper. And so I did cold reads. I played a father who was, I should say a husband who was a little creative in putting away the Christmas decorations at the end of the season. So that's what I did, and I won 3rd place for that. And then for commercial print on the modeling side, I won either 4th, 5th, or 6th place. I don't know exactly which, but one of those out of around 1,500 people for commercial print. So the pictures that I did, there was a lot of work that I did related to photo movement, how one person moves the body over the course of a photography shoot can enable the photographer to just keep shooting. And as a result of them just continuously shooting, you end up with a lot more pictures to choose from to find the best ones that you can then select for the competition or the performance or the ad or whatever you're going to use it for. So there was a lot of work that went into just getting ready, other than just the outfits themselves, to be able to be prepared to do the photo shoot correctly and accurately that was successful in the awards. I then also posted a lot of content if you just want to see other pictures from IMTA and some of the other people and some of the other events, what it was like, on my Instagram. So you're more than welcome to follow me at ckactormodel, and you can get all of that extra content in addition to inspirational content, in addition to continuous improvement and other types of leadership development content that I post that's tied to my business work and simple leadership consulting. So how did I do all this, right? How did I get to the point where I was successful in a competition with a series of other people also competing and trying to develop themselves as highly, some of them developing themselves over years and years and years and years, and then showing up to this competition, whereas I only did it in about 8 months. So how did I do that? What specifically did I do in order to be successful? There's a few things. First, I started out with my strategy. And I show this picture of the Cybertruck because there's a great series of strategy that they used in Tesla in order to develop the Cybertruck. And it was simple, few points. And I'll tell you my strategy. I'll not share theirs. You can Google that online. My strategy for IMTA was tied to a few key points. One is I love acting and modeling. I came to the conclusion that people have told me that I'm photogenic. I've done some acting work on the side, some musical content, ages past, and I just love doing it. So because I love doing it, I want to be following in my passions as much as I possibly can, whatever those passions may be. So that was the first piece of my strategy. The second piece was I intend to use this for developing leaders and teams. As a result of the work that I do in my consultancy, I run into different scenarios where you have different personality conflicts or different personnel conflicts or other types of challenges getting people inspired and motivated and creatively acting as a really high-performing team. And when you have those kinds of challenges, it really pays to be able to work through them in a healthy, safe environment. If I can be the actor working with a leader, I can develop that leader's skills better by giving them the challenge of working through those scenarios in a safe environment with me, and then when they go working with their employees, they can be more successful. So there's a huge opportunity to leverage this skill set in what I do in my consultancy to develop a better quality product, which is developing leaders faster, more effectively than what I otherwise could. The third piece is tied to an interest in taking some of the information from this and applying it to just my business side, and you're seeing a little bit of the effects of that here today. So I've got all kinds of different equipment, which the camera can't quite see because it's in use, but all of that equipment is part of the skill set and knowledge that I'm developing in acting and modeling that I'm then going to use to make more effective marketing and more effective communications for both my team internal to my company and for external customers that I'm trying to get to understand who I am and what I do and what I can do for them. So if I can deliver a higher quality product in the presentation, then there's a lot of value in connecting immediately with my customer base and being able to work with those people to make great results. So that's my strategy. So that's why I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Now, how did I actually get into it? What did I actually do? And I started out with, of course, standardization. How do I make myself as effective as possible? I've got a short time window and I want to take a lot of learning and cram it into a short time and get a lot of skill out as a result. So some of the standards that I have are just note-taking. When I'm in a class and I'm trying to listen to an instructor, I always look for what are the key actions that I need to take and apply to myself afterwards. And that is the very top part of my note standard. Anytime I hear an action talked about, it goes up in the top so that I can easily and quickly go back to the action and actually perform it after the class. Some other keys to the note standards is I've got a whole different infrastructure in Evernote as well too of how I put my notes and categorize them, so it's very easy for me to get to a note very fast. So I can immediately go into a subsection under my current work, find my acting and modeling, find my training course, or search for it in that subsection area, as opposed to just randomly trying to dive into the entire thing or randomly trying to remember one key word that actually existed in the notes in order to actually get there. Video. When I was doing a lot of this work, I was always asking them for, show me an example video. Picture's worth 1,000 words, video is 1,000 pictures. Give me an example walk of a runway model walk. And so they had their expert instructor do that, and I recorded it and posted it and shared with the rest of the team. I also watched that model walk in addition to other model walks a lot in order for me to understand what it was they were doing that was different than what it was I was doing. I also took video of myself doing the performances, and they took video of myself doing the performances and gave me feedback on the video so I could see what I was doing that I needed to change and then go change it. So there was a lot of repetitive learning and a lot of feedback and using video in order to accomplish that as a source. And as I kind of talked, practice, 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 practice. I developed a lot of daily practices in both acting, learning cold reads, and learning improv techniques, and learning other content around my monologue, in addition to the runway model walking and practicing that. I even got my gym to let me use one of their side rooms because of wintertime around here, right? How are you supposed to practice a runway model walk? And my current living location's not big enough to support that sort of thing. So I got the side room that I was able to use, and just whenever there was no one in there in use, then make use of it in my practice. So doing that constant practice, doing that video, and actually using a really effective note structure are standards that helped me to be successful in learning fast. A few other things, though, that I love to create: visual aids. I've done visual aids for all kinds of different purposes, even back to the standards. For my daily practice, I had to create a visual worksheet of the different practice items that I wanted to do on a daily basis. And then I scheduled that at the morning when I first woke up and figured out how it would fit in and amongst all the other things that I have to do, all the other work for my consultancy, all the other livelihood that I have to do with my kids, and everything else that I need to do within the day. Some of it can be scheduled, but then a lot of this practice content I had to fit in different places. Using a visual aid like that enabled me to be more successful in actually fitting the practice content in, as opposed to just cramming it into a schedule saying, all right, I'm going to practice every day from 8 to 9 p.m. at night, and that's exactly when I'm going to do it, when your schedule was not that flexible to allow for that kind of thing to be fit in. So depending upon your scenario, sometimes the calendar is a great resource when you can have consistency, but when you're stuck with having to deal with dynamic scheduling, other visual aids can enable you to be successful. Here's another picture of a visual aid that I created for packing. Here we are doing a lot of different performances: monologues, cold reads, improv, runway model walk, and all of these different performances have very different visual looks to them. My outfit to the T, sometimes accessories, looks with hairstyling, all kinds of different content. And I needed to fly from Cleveland to Los Angeles and have everything I needed for me to be successful right then and there, because there's no time to even go out and buy the missing XYZ that I forgot to pack. So how did I do that? Visual aids, visual checklist. Took pictures as we went along, approving different outfit styles, and used that in a separate folder in order for me to pack. So I would pack the exact outfit in the exact way that I needed to have it, ready to go in the suitcase. And I even learned from other people in this that they even pack it within a dry cleaning bag, to the point where you're selecting one outfit out at a time from your suitcase, hanging it up, and you're done. So there's even more effective methods to make the practice more successful, especially when you're doing a lot of travel. I was really interested in making sure I had everything I needed so that I could actually be successful in the competitions themselves. This visual checklist made it really easy for me to do that. I also post these kinds of content on my Instagram, another plug for that ckactormodel Instagram if you want to follow that. Other kinds of standard work and other kinds of life practices. It's more along the lines of continuous improvement applied to personal life. It makes things a lot easier, which gets me to the next one, which is other standard work. So sometimes when you're trying to improve something, you go after the specific item that you're trying to improve. I've talked a lot about standards and visuals and other scheduling practices that I did in order to be successful in doing this specific task for the International Model and Talent Agency. But I also did other content to eliminate work from my personal life to enable me to have more time to be able to do what I wanted to do related to all of this effort as well too. And here's an example. Meal prep. I would meal prep for an entire week, and I did that with the intention that I wanted to have all that cooking time back on the table for me to use related to acting and modeling practice and other learning that I needed to do. So in order to do that meal prep, I created a standard system of here's a couple different sets of meals that I can make in volume using the equipment that I currently have at my disposal in my kitchen in order to successfully make a large enough series of meals to be able to feed me for the entire week. Meal prep. And it then cuts out all this extra time. So by creating a standard such as this and then following that standard, it enabled me to free up even more time to then apply to the thing that was most important. This is a lot of things that I talk about in my consultancy, where when it comes to people doing the work in improving their business, a lot of times you can focus on the content you're really interested in, but sometimes you just need to get rid of distractions. Sometimes you just need to get rid of other things that are consuming your time that don't need to be consuming your time as intensely. If there's ways to reduce it or eliminate it or completely take it off the table, then it's a wonderful resource to open up all that extra time to then use on the thing that's most important. So here's a series. I also, I passed around that book. Here's one last thing, and it's not in the presentation. It's related to setup when I actually got to the convention itself. They gave us this schedule book, and you can see where I highlighted in all the different performances that I was involved in and all the different times associated with it. But then what I want to take your attention to is the maps. The hotel itself is a wonderful hotel for being what I would call one of the most artistically created hotels I've seen, which is outstanding if you're there on leisure. If you're there for a business convention where you have to perform and be in different locations across the entire hotel at specific times throughout the day, going from location to location to location, day after day after day, it becomes a little bit of a challenge. So I had to even highlight out some of the content around the hotel logistics and some other key notes and key points of how to get around the hotel, and I'll pass that around if you want to look at that, in order to be successful. In addition, I went to the information desk on day one, I think it was Monday, as early as I possibly could before any crowd showed up, so that I could talk to one of the people in the information desk and ask, how do I get from here to here? And at one point they said, would you like to just take a walk? And I said, yes, I would love to just take a walk. Let's take a walk. And so we walked around that entire hotel, going from point to point, trying to get to the specific locations that I needed to be able to know how to get to, and wanted to build that memory, muscle memory within my mind of the logistics of getting around. That way, when I'm dressed and ready for my performance, I can focus my attention and energy on my performance as opposed to focusing it on how do I need to get around the hotel. So by doing all that as set up in pre-work as well too, another standard, then it became an easier thing for me to do to allow me to be just present in the moment, focused on my performance, and just relaxed. And when I go to do what I need to do, I do it as effectively as I possibly can, enough that I was able to win a few awards. So that's the summation of my presentation. Do you guys have any questions, thoughts, comments? Sure.
So if you were to take like one of the examples you threw up there, like the clothes planning, the outfits.
Yes.
Can you give an example how you directly relate that to a, say, business owner client?
Yeah, so you're not in the business sense going to necessarily need pictures of your clothes, but you're going to need pictures of other things. The exact business scenario, I'll talk about it from like a product standpoint, and you could think of this as a physical product, or it could be a transactional product. It could be a form that needs filled out, or it could be some other processing of a new client or a person that you have to do within your organization and specific steps that need to be done. What you can do is you can create a picture, because it tells 1,000 words, of what good looks like. of what the final good result looks like, and maybe you highlight out some of the key areas where people are more likely to make a mistake, or where it's more apt to a problem, or where it's more critical for us to be successful. So a picture of what good looks like and a picture of what some of the mistakes looks like helps people to then be able to quickly and easy be able to do the task and know and be able to self-check themselves as well too as to whether they got the final result successfully. It's another example of using visuals and pictures to enable success. Any other questions?
The presentation you gave, is that a topic they threw at you, or was that something you came prepared to do?
The presentation?
The
The monologue. The monologue was a complete prepared speech. So, well, I should say acting, because it's more of an acting interaction, right? That was completely prepared. So that entire length of thing was all done over the last 6 to 8 months. The cold read, which I won for, was unprepared. That was, here's a piece of paper, here are your lines, and now go. And so I did my best to do a little bit of preparation in the very short few, I think they give you an hour to kind of just get some of it in your head to be able to do so, and got a little bit of coaching from some support that I had local at when I was there. And then I did the performance then right away. So there's an example of unprepared versus prepared. The improv is completely unprepared as well too. You're just giving a scenario and you have to come up with what do you want to do and then just roll with it, and the interaction between you and the other actor or actress is the improv. So those are all unprepared, whereas the jeans runway walk that you saw also was another prepared item. Now, I wasn't necessarily prepared with the exact scenario of how to do that runway walk. They told us when we got there that it was going to be this kind of a shape, and they wanted us to do only one pose. So there was some nuance to it that I had to adjust for on the fly. But there was other walk aspects that I prepared in order to be able to do that successfully. So depending upon what it was competition-wise, some of it was prepared, some of it was not. Other questions?
Just thinking, do you normally, with your management consulting, do you usually work with an individual, like a leader of the group, or do you usually work with groups?
So I usually, it depends, well, see, there's that it depends question. Sometimes I've worked with just an individual leader, and that leader then through my training and coaching and other forms of development would then go and implement content with the team, and I would provide feedback to the leader, and I would also help enhance the team's performance by providing some comments and questions throughout different interactions between the leader and the team in order to implement different kinds of systems like visual management systems in order to manage work, or other improvement systems in order to manage the process of managing change within the organization. So I've done it where I'm just working mostly with the leader itself. I've also done it where I'm the project manager working specifically with the team to develop a specific improvement or change result within the organization. And in that scenario, then it's more direct hands-on me with the team actually accomplishing the work in order to yield this very specific change. So when it comes to my consultancy, I've got a few different options on the table depending upon what they're interested in. I prefer the leadership development piece no matter what, either having some form of coaching that goes on with leadership development even if I'm doing the project management work. And that's because when I'm done as a project manager, I leave. As a consultant, you're done and you walk away, then the organization persists. So how does the organization maintain and continue with the rest of the change work that was recently accomplished and other implementation of that in other places? Oftentimes it's one for the project, but there's other repeat projects or similar to projects. How do they then continue afterwards? So there's always a piece of leadership interaction that I do in order to enable that to be successful. But I prefer, as much as possible, doing more of the leadership side and then developing the whole process through them, because it enables them to have deeper ability, capability, knowledge, and long-term success working on things that are completely unrelated to what we did. And I'll give you an example. I recently did a project with a gentleman who was in charge of about 50 people. It was transactional processing, so it was all paper to electronic records management and record keeping. And they did a lot of work to completely change their facility layout for single product movements, so that everything was time synchronized through all the different activities that had to be performed by the team. I helped him to understand that kind of concept and then be able to do a pilot, which he ran with the team. He had to rerun that pilot, I think 3 or 4 times before he refined it enough with the team to come up with the end result that they were happy with as a group. But then they went and implemented that across the entire group of 50, and as a result of that, he actually doubled his productivity, his performance, his entire performance of his team went up 100%. So, not only was he successful in that one area, but then he tells me afterwards, Chris, you've completely changed my life. I understand things now that I didn't understand before about how to run my organization, about how to lead my team, about how to run my business, that now I'm able to use and do on my own entirely after this. And thank you so much. I'm going to be a completely different person from this point forward. And it's that kind of result that I love achieving, because then I know that they're good to go and I can move on to somebody else feeling extremely confident that they will be just fine. And if they call me up for something else, it's because they want to learn something else that we never talked about. So that's what I like doing most in my consultancy. And that's why I will like working very heavily with the leaders, and I prefer even doing the leadership development to develop the team side as opposed to the other way.
I can see sometimes the top person is not a very good communicator. Maybe the leadership skills aren't there as well, but I can see you working with them to become better in communicating their message, that they also see that in the people below them, and so then you start working with them as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The whole leadership chain is a critical element in the success of any organization. And you're absolutely right. This is why I'm so excited about the acting and modeling content that I'm picking up, because I'm really excited about using that to help leaders develop themselves more effectively and faster. In my entire career, I always run into a new, what I call running into the brick wall at full speed, right? You run into a new problem and it hits you really hard in a particular scenario, and you say to yourself, well, now what do I do? How do I solve that? And the more recent one that I am intending to solve, that I'm solving now, is related to leadership development. And I will use this acting skill set to enable leaders to really get the practice they need, get the feedback they need in a safe environment, as opposed to having to practice with the team and feeling the consequences of what their current performance is like. Other thoughts, comments?
Thank you, Chris.
All right, thank you.